Hi everyone, I'm joined by Bhavishya Pandit, Senior Gen AI Engineer, Google Developer, expert in AI, LinkedIn top voice, and educator whose content has been viewed over a million times. He has mentored more than 2,500 students, spoken at 50 plus events, including for the Ministry of Home Affairs India and IITNs, and he is passionate about making AI ML accessible to everyone. Last time when we spoke, it was supposed to be a 10 minutes chat, but turned into a 35-minute mini podcast. So today we are making this chat official. We are diving into everything from Gen AI to career lessons and a few behind the scenes stories along the way. Hi Bhavishya, welcome to Latency and Latte. A lot of people see you as a AI thought leader, but is there something about your early career what would surprise people?
So I started off my career uh, as someone, of course, who was looking out for internships. In my college at that time, there were not many opportunities related to data science. They were mostly related to software engineering and all of that stuff, and that did not interest me as much. I started off. I knew that my path was pretty clear that I'll have to look out for opportunities outside my college, off-campus placements. I'll have to look. So I just started looking out for internships early on as for off-campus, and that is exactly how I started off my social media journey. From that because I realized that off-campus placements would be the way for me to go. Yep, that's one of those things, and I started off my social media journey like that. And one very funny incident around that is that I tend to forget things when I was just starting like a couple of years back, 6 7 years back, right? So what had happened at that time was I started treating social media as a way like my digital notes, right? So that I don't forget. I'll just try to write it for my own self, and that is exactly how I started sharing knowledge. So that's the intent was not of social media or anything like that. It was just of first of all to make sure that I remember things, and the second thing was to figure out internships.
Yeah, you hijacked my second question. You have a great presence on LinkedIn. When you started posting online, did you have a master plan or was it more like, let's just see what happens if I share this code snippet?
To be very honest, there was no plan. When I started off from LinkedIn, and when I started off there, I realized that there were a couple of people who were actually posting the like daily dose kind of thing, right? 100 days of code, 100 days of something
Yeah.
like that. At that time, it was trending out there, right? So it's like, okay, that's a good way of getting started and making sure that you're sticking to your habits. I realized pretty early on that if I want to get better at it, I'll have to keep practicing it. I'll have to keep diving deep into it. Now, slowly and gradually, what had happened was when I started doing it, right? Now, slowly and steadily, people started following the content. They started engaging, and I was like, oh wow, people are actually liking it. Now, then I started thinking in terms of people, right? So I cannot be posting same content again and again. So I had to make sure that whatever content that I'm producing or whatever content that I'm sharing, it has to be insightful for them. So I started off learning new things so that my audience or whoever, let's say even 5 people are reading it, for example, right? They should find value in it. If I'm not reading or learning anything new, no one will find value in it at one point after one point of time.
Absolutely. I feel that there are certain topics, if you are using LinkedIn as a teaching platform or collaboration, there are a few things you have to be repetitive in terms of tokenization. Right now, I have started talking about tokenization, and it's a very huge topic where you have to be repetitive of your content. A study material, if you are referring any papers.
Not a problem. I believe not adding value is the biggest problem.
Yeah.
Even if you have, let's say, you have written about that topic 2 months back, that does not mean that you cannot write it now. Let's say something new has come in that topic. So you can cover the previous part, whatever you have done, and then maybe something new, whatever that has come into the market, which anyways has been the case with generative AI lately, right? So that can be taken care of, I believe.
Makes sense. Do you remember your first AIML project that actually worked?
Yes. So what had happened, as I told, so I started looking for internships, and I realized that there's a lot of competition, especially when you are applying for jobs from India, right? So if someone is reading my resume, it has to stand out. So one good way of standing out is by solving real problems, by having good projects on your resume, right? Which of course showcase your skills. So what I used to do was I used to steal problem statements from Smart India Hackathon websites at that time, right? So there was this one project which I remember was around voice prescription. Basically, people, especially India, at that time had started moving towards digitization, digital, and all of that stuff, right? So one problem with a lot of doctors was that the handwriting was not readable, and there were different formats at that time. So they were like, "What if we just say whatever we want, right? Or whatever the prescription is in the voice manner, and that gets stored in the digital format automatically.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was one of those projects, small projects. I didn't know anything, to be very honest, at that time. I was pretty new with Python and all of that stuff. So I used to work on this one package named Kinter, right? Tkinter. So it was at that time for GUI purposes, graphical user interface purposes, and I used to use it for just to make sure to, if I'm going to my professor, I would just go and show it to him. Hey, at least see, I've made something like this, and then they'd be like, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
make
remember.
it a bit more presentable. That's it. That was the main idea.
I remember voice interface wasn't in thing that time. Lately, I have also been exploring about voice agents where you have to implement text to speech, speech to text libraries, and now there are transformers. Things are developing, and a lot of companies are using voice interfaces lately. You have your own lessons learned. So let's
Yeah,
dive.
I'm also thinking in terms of that, I better, um, I would say that getting started was more important for me at that
Yeah.
time than building, a really good, impressive project. It was more of being able to build projects, because I'd be very, very honest with you. When I was in college, right, just like all the other college people, we just used to copy paste projects and all of that stuff. But
Yeah.
I realized lately, I realized at that time that early on that I have to start doing things by myself. There are certain things which you cannot fake.
Yeah.
Right. So that was the mindset. I was like, I'll just do it, even if it is about at that point of time, even if it is about calling some API or just getting started. I just need to know the why behind certain things. The focus
Yeah.
was more on understanding the why.
Right. Working on a real-time project and working on your side projects where you are learning more tools, getting hands-on with the technology, and you know exactly why are you doing it, how to navigate all the projects. That is important. It gets paid. Let's dive into the AI playground, the tools you are using, the experiments you have run, and what you are seeing in the Gen AI space right now. You have worked across machine learning, deep learning, computer vision, NLP, and now you are into Gen AI. Which space do you feel is evolving fastest right now, and why?
I think it is Gen AI, because Gen AI is a culmination of all of the other spaces that you have said, right? It is just the generative format of that, and I believe there's a lot of scope in it. And I was actually listening to one of the podcasts from Sam Altman, right? And he said that the most important skill in his point of view, I'm just quoting him. He said that the most important skill, in my opinion, is the ability to learn new skills, new tools, and getting comfortable and accommodating yourself into newer environments.
Yeah.
That is going to be the most important skill.
Yeah. Was it with Nikhil Kamath? I was listening that too yesterday. They were talking about what are the skill sets a beginner should learn, like 25 years old, and what are the hard skills and soft skills we should acquire. That was a great podcast.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most practical way enterprises should be using LLM today?
The most practical way, I believe, first of all, it is very subjective based on whatever the needs are. But of course, if they are, the answer can be domain specific based on whatever that company, whatever the industry that company or that organization is in. But one pretty very very common use cases that you would see out there is around customer support automation. Mainly LLMs would be used for where intelligence is required to some degree. Intelligence plus automation kind of thing. So with LLMs, you can have a lot of other applications of it. Like you can have multi-agent orchestrated workflows. You can have something as simple as RAG, right? Multi-modal RAG or something like that. So there are multiple use cases on that. Let's say if there is going very simple, there can be something as simple as a support chatbot. A support chatbot can be applicable to your finance companies as well, your healthcare startups, right? Your edtech startups, anywhere, any support kind of a thing, you can have such
Right.
such things. Yeah.
Great to know. And since you have worked extensively on GCP and you are a Google developer expert, you have seen how AI products get built on GCP. What I find interesting is how GCP tools layer AutoML, they make quick prototyping so much easier, and how they integrate AI directly into the data pipeline instead of treating it as a separate layer. If I'm a data scientist starting on GCP tomorrow, where do you think I would get the most leverage managed services like Vertex or rolling my own compute engine?
I would say that if you're just getting started with GCP Vertex AI would be a very good starting point because of a couple of reasons. Vertex AI is an ecosystem in itself, right? Anything and everything related to a model you would be able to find over there, right? You'll be able to find support for leveraging the existing models, training the model, fine tuning the model, right? Deploying the model over there itself. So there are things that you can do from Vertex AI, and it's pretty intuitive. Once, I mean, there is certain learning curve that is required whenever you are just getting started with any new technology, right, or any new framework. But I think Google as a whole is a great ecosystem, and through Vertex you can connect to a lot of dots within the GCP ecosystem.
That's interesting. How do you see these GCP's approach stacking up against AWS, Microsoft for AI heavy workloads? What do you think is the most practical way enterprises should be using LLMs today? I mean, in terms of GCP, AWS, there are more cloud platforms.
I think the most practical manner would be the one where they are using it frugally, right? You asked a similar question earlier, but I answered it in the case of use cases. But if they have to use it, they should be using it frugally and judiciously. Just because you have LLM, that does not give you a free hand to use LLM for everything, right? LLM comes with its own cost, with its own headaches. That is, you'll have to, have guardrails. And LLM, or just in the same fashion as a deep learning model, is a black box at the end of the day, right? You do not necessarily know all the time what it might answer. You can always have, a rough estimate of what it would predict, but not always, right? So a lot of monitoring, and human in the loop definitely would be there. So when you are just integrating one LLM to your workflow, there are a lot of new variables that come into the picture. You'll have to have one human in the loop. You'll have to monitor it differently. You'll have to evaluate it differently than the existing pipeline, right? Maybe. So in that case, I would say that ask yourself first if LLM is even required or not. If it is not required, then don't go for it. Because whenever there are recursive calls, in any case, especially for agents, the cost shoots up like anything.
Makes sense.
The cost will touch Mars before Elon Musk in that case. So in that case, you have to be very judicial in terms of what do you want to do, whether you even want to do it or not. If there are some rules that you can actually write, if there are very definitive answers, to be very honest, one rule of thumb, if I have to give, there are definitive answers to it. Let's say some condition, some use case. If there are definitive paths to it, right? Like 3 or 4, or let's say even 10, right? They are defined that your answer cannot go beyond that. I don't think you really have to use LLM for that. LLM is where more intelligence is required, where maybe the number of responses or the kind of response that you can get is not very defined, not very definitive. And in such cases, you would want to go ahead with LLMs in that case, or where more randomness is involved, right? Where you would want to add more randomness, something of that sort.
Lately, every company is AI now. A.ai, B.ai, and it's powered by LLM, and some or the other product side they are using it. And now the vibe coding tool is also coming into a picture. People are very used to using AI. It's difficult thing where we should not use AI.
Yeah, that's so true. I was actually reading the other day that a lot of startups actually got shut down because, I mean, it has become a norm now, especially if you are someone who's actually starting a company by yourself, an AI company for that fact. One good question to ask yourself is, am I just a wrapper, or am I adding enough value? How do I build a product which is difficult even for Google to build or OpenAI to? Now, because you do not really want to be in a position where you are just one feature away from being bankrupt, right?
Right.
So if they release something new, if a new feature release comes into the market, you're gone, right? Because you are, as a company, maybe you are someone who is just, you want to establish yourself, but they are established players. They have more testimonials, they have more, proof of work. And of course, they have, their brand value is more compared to any company starting new. But again, that does not mean, that should not stop you from getting started. One very big example that we have is Arvind Srinivas, right? Yeah, he has done great with Perplexity. He gave this offer to Google to buy to get access to
Back. Yeah.
$34 billion or something like that. So that should not stop you just because there are established players. That should not stop you from dreaming big and taking that leap. But also, again, having a good balance of being aspirational, delusional, and judicial at the same time.
Yeah, 90% time I use Perplexity over Google search. Bhavishya, RAG pipeline obsession is there. I feel like every AI conversation eventually lands on RAG pipeline. retrieval augmented generation. I have seen people get excited about it, sometimes even overcomplicating it with five different vector databases. Complex chunking strategies are there, and still the retrieval quality isn't great. Do you think people underestimate the complexity of evaluating retrieval quality compared to just building the pipeline?
So with RAG, I think that very simple analogy that we can have to understand RAG
Yeah,
is
sorry to interrupt here. Maybe you can just give us a brief about what is RAG and how does it work, and then we can start to the question.
So for all the viewers who do not know what RAG is, basically LLMs, we all know that, let's say you want to generate something, you asked a question to ChatGPT and it is able to answer it flawlessly. But what if you have gotten an offer letter or there is some legal document that you have? ChatGPT would not know even a thing about it because it is not trained on it. But yes, the ability that each large language model has is that if you provide them enough context, they would be able to answer that question. The same thing happens with the RAG as well. The limitation of just plain LLMs is that they cannot answer your question if they do not have that context. We go about it by providing that context and then asking the same question, and then it has the ability to answer. Now, in that case also, just by, let's say you have a 500-page document, you simply cannot be giving that document to an LLM directly because of, let's say, context window limitations. If I'll ask you to remember 5 sentences, how much as a human would you be able to remember, right? So that is your limitations. Let's say at a time you can remember only 3 sentences, but if I give you 5 sentences and if I asked a question which is on the fifth sentence or fourth sentence, since your ability to remember is only till 3 sentences, you would not be able to answer the fourth sentence or the question which was related to the fifth sentence. So it can be, inferenced and understood in a similar way that it works similarly for LLMs as well. So that is why we give them only that information which is required, and that is exactly what RAG does. So where you are breaking it down into embeddings,
Vectors,
vector embeddings, and then what happens is whatever question that we have, we search for those embeddings. So embeddings in the sense which is the most relevant information from the chunk of information that you have. With certain algorithms, we try to do that. And once we have extracted that information, we get the most relevant information. So let's say if you have asked for some XYZ clause in a 50-page legal document, right? So now based on that algorithm finds that the most relevant information from the question that I or you have asked is on page number 25, for example, right? So rather than giving the entire 50-page document, it will, let's say, give page number 25. Now what LLM would be able to do it is it just has to read that page 25, it understood what your question is, and then it gives you back. Now, there can be cases where the information is scattered. There's some part of it, you have asked a question, some part of it is on page number 18, some part is on page number 25, some part is on page number 27, something like that. So in that case, if you just give 25, then chances are that it will hallucinate.
Right.
So that is why to make sure that these scenarios don't have. So for people who do not know, hallucination is a case where LLM tries to come up with answers correct, factually correct, but they are not.
Yeah.
Equivalent of you giving a viva to a professor and you have not studied even a bit. And just to say that, okay, just saying some or the other answer because saying I do not know it.
Yeah, because you know it, you're aware of it, you're just blabbering.
Just making those answers up. Yeah.
Absolutely. And how does it's kind of fine tuning as well? So how does RAG versus fine tuning?
Fine tuning, you can go about fine tuning when you know that my use case won't change. But let's say you are referring a document and that document can change, the content in that document can change, then you should go with RAG because RAG is a more, fine tuning is a more expensive affair, right? It consumes more resources compared to RAG. So you should have that understanding whether the use case that I'm in is the content around it changing too frequently, can it change or not? If it can, you better go with a RAG thing because it is just a plug and play for you. You just change the name of the file in your system and the entire thing works the same way. Yeah, maybe the retrieval part or the embedding part maybe, but nothing more than.
So you are saying RAG is more domain specific and cheaper option compared to fine tuning.
It is cheaper. Domain specific, I would say that if you know, both are domain specific. I mean, it is both of them are used for giving specified answers based on whatever information that you would want to provide. But the thing is that whenever you're trying to fine tune an LLM, it is a costlier affair compared to a RAG pipeline. So until unless you're pretty sure that this is going to be the case and where my information is not going to change at all, then you should go about fine tuning or else RAG should work pretty well for you.
Yeah. If someone is building a RAG for the first time, is there a minimum viable setup you recommend before they start layering complexity?
I would say that nowadays things have become a lot easier and accessible for you to get started with anything. The minimal viable setup is curiosity and your intent to learn, to be very honest, right? As far as LLMs and all of that stuff is concerned, you can have free Gemini API, you can use state of the art LLMs for free, right? You
Right.
have Hugging Face, you can get that part as well. Again, you have Google who's giving their embedding models for you to use for free. They don't even ask you to, go about logging into their GCP and all of that stuff. You don't have to do anything, pretty much anything. Then you also have NVIDIA. They have their NIM platform. Through that, you can access a lot of their platforms. And I mean, there are retrievers, embedding models, and a lot of vision models, etc., which you can go and use for free. And similarly, we have Grok as well, GROQ. There are numerous platforms where you can access LLMs for free. The mentality of people was that, okay, I'll have to pay. I mean, early on with OpenAI, right, we had to sign up with our credit card, and then only then, when I'm talking about like 2.5, 3 years back, close to that, right, when GPT-3 had just released. At that time, yeah, it's around September 2022, around that time.
Yeah.
Then you had to give your credit card for all of these things. But now,
It was GPT-2 or something. They started with GPT.
yeah. No, but the boom started after GPT-3.
Yeah, it just ramped up after GPT-3. There was GPT-2
September
earlier.
2022. There is this one more GROQ, which has pretty fast inference compared
Okay.
to other LLMs. Yeah. Hugging Face
Yeah.
also has relatively fast inference. I think a lot of these LLMs have faster inference now. Earlier, it used to be pretty slow. Like you used to get response in like some 6, 7 seconds or something like that. But now you don't have to wait as much.
Hugging Face, I have been using it. It's good in terms of inference. I have seen your post about your chat with Dr. S. Shivakumar. That stuck with me. The 4 Ps: profile, program, priority, and preference. Often projects fail not because of the idea, but because of the execution. Which one do you struggle the most, and how do you mitigate that one? Before we jump into the question, can you walk us through about your chat with Shivakumar while you were on a plane?
The same plane, I was also with Narayan Murthy. So it was a pretty interesting incident
Yeah.
for me because I actually had a session that day, and I had a session to take, and I did not sleep properly, and I had an early morning flight, like eight-ish. So I had to be. I think it was 9. So I had to be there by 7:30. If I have to be there by 7:30, I have to wake up at
Yeah,
5.
5, 4:30. You have to start
5.
early. Yeah.
Yeah.
Considering
So
Bangalore's traffic.
yeah, no, at that time I was in Ahmedabad. So I was
Okay.
traveling from Ahmedabad to Bangalore. Yeah. So at that time, I would say that I had slept at 1, and you're just waking up at like just sleeping for 4 hours. And I was like, I have a session, I have to talk for 2 hours straight up. So I'd be landing there, and then I have to go to that venue straight up. So I won't have any time, and I just wanted to make sure that the session is is delivered properly. So I wanted to sleep, and I was trying to sleep, but there was some food that was there, right? So the air hostess had come, and she asked me to, she was asking Mr. Pandit. I was like, yes, please give it to me. I'll have it. And when I opened my eyes, on my diagonal, Narayan Murthy was standing, right?
Wow.
And so he had come from washroom, apparently. So at first, I actually doubted myself. I was like, maybe. I was like, maybe not. That kind of a situation, right? Where you're just having a petal in your, maybe it is Narayan Murthy, maybe it's not something. I didn't even know that. I did not even know, because I was just, when you
Okay.
are, I had that thought about my session, this session that I have to deliver.
Right.
So I asked the air hostess, do we have Narayan Murthy on board? So she was like, yes. I was like, okay, this is the other one. I was like, nice, that's pretty good. So then he was sitting beside me. Dr. S. Shivakumar was just sitting beside me, and he was like, yes, I have met him. And then he started introducing himself. What do you do? First, he asked me what do I do and all that stuff. Then I told him that I'm into AI and all of that stuff. I've worked with Government of India, and I've done collaborations, Google, NVIDIA, and all of that stuff. So he was like, that's pretty good. And then he said that I also work for government. I was like, nice, that's really cool. Where do you work? So he's like, ISRO and all of that stuff. And then he said that I have 35 years of experience in ISRO. I have 15 years of experience in atomic energy or something like that, right? He said, and then 7 years of experience in finance. I'm like, sir, that is already 57 years of experience. If there is no if it is not mutually exclusive, something like that. So it's like, if they're separate experiences, it is already 57 years. I do
Yeah.
not want to ask your age. I do not want to be so rude. I'm probably half your age, your experience right now. Then I was just all ears, and I knew that I was coincidentally in the right spot. and I asked certain questions to him around the 4 Ps and how do I become better as a leader? How do I become better in executing things? Making sure that whatever I'm starting, that I complete also. And then when I was going out, I also asked and met Narayan Murthy, and I asked a couple of questions, one or two questions, not more. And I just wanted to make sure that he's having his space as well, because there were a lot of people who were trying to click photographs with him and all of that stuff. So I understand that, I did not want to bug him more. So I just asked one simple question, that how do we how would India, what is the best possible way of improving India's current condition? How can deep tech come from India? Something around that. So he said that the mindset of people has to change, and the education system has to change. If you are pursuing things only for the sake of grades and all of that, you would not be building something substantial which actually solves a problem. So you have to figure out problems. You have to be a problem solver first. You have to interact with people. You have to understand what their problem is, and then you have to build a solution for them which solves that problem.
Right.
That approach lacks a lot. That is what he said, and I completely resonate with it. That so it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Sometimes we might look out for answers, complicated answers, or I would say answers that we feel would be like too enlightening. But often happens that it is the simpler things that matter more, the right questions and the simplicity of them being answered, so that you understand how those things are working. Sometimes, that simple answer is something which you already knew.
Right.
You just did not have faith in it.
Agree, where he said our education system should be changed. Bhavisha, we were talking about the 4 Ps, which you recently explained about the profile, program, priority, and preferences. Which one do you struggle the most, and how do you mitigate that one?
So I had asked the same question to Dr. Shivakumar as well. And I sort of, as I told you, right? Sometimes you already know the answer to the question already, right? But you still ask that question in a hope to get a different perspective, right? If if you get a different perspective, it is actually good for you, because that is what the intent was, right? Even if in a case where you do not get a different perspective, that is still good, because that indirectly validates your current beliefs, right? So in my understanding, it was programming, right? Whatever you want to build, identifying what you want to build is the most important aspect, right? Having and trying to do research around it. Like, let's say if you are having some problem, right? And if I am building a solution, or if I want to build a solution around it, I need to understand what problems you are having, right? So understanding those components, and then each and every P as a has its own set of challenges and has its own set of weights, right? Has its own set of priority. But I would say that where do you want to start, right? And where do you want to go exactly? That determines the most. Because let's say there was this one point where, if you when aeroplane is taking off, right? And if that aeroplane sort of, or that aircraft shifts even by a degree, 1 degree, right? And if it continues for some extended period of time, right? I'm not able to remember that what time it was, like 2 hours, 3 hours, or exactly what it was. Then the displacement from the original position where it was supposed to land versus where it would land can sometimes be as big as 10,000 kilometers. So basically, it just starts from your 1 degree deviation. So course correction and what you are doing and where you want to go, and in the meantime, what course correction is needed, if there is some course correction, that is the most important part. Getting started is the most important part.
Right. So understand your use case and build
Have a very thorough understanding of what exactly you want to do and why you are doing it. If you have that conviction that this is why am I doing it, and this is actually the problem, and this is the right approach for me to do it, go about it, that is going to solve the problem. That will,
finding your own why and then work.
yes, it'll actually help you get that clarity as to why am I building this solution. When you have that clarity, why am I building this solution, you would be able to communicate it to other people better. First, if you only don't have that clarity, how would you be able to convince other people?
Makes sense. If you have the clarity, you can easily transcript. And we were talking offline, and you use some horse and AI analogy, remember? Like that part, our audience should know about it. Can you just help me recollect that one?
Sure. So you want me to say the question as well, or?
Oh, let's rephrase it.
Yep, sure. So the context for the listeners is that in the era of AI, how do we go about it,
Yeah.
right? What is how do we learn? How do we make sure that our jobs are safe? So first of all, not everything is in your hands, but the least yet the most important thing that you can do right now is to get hands on with the AI tools that are having. Become more familiar with how do you leverage them in your day-to-day activities to make sure that your work gets accelerated.
Right.
Now, let's say not using AI tools in the era of AI tools or AI is like running a race, being a part of race where you are competing against horses, right? So in a case where you are running bare feet, which is likely the case of you competing with someone who leverages AI tools and you are not, that is equivalent of you running bare feet versus someone who is on a horse,
Yeah.
right? So at that time you would always be in that self-doubt. You'll take more time, you'll take more time in learning, you'll take more time in executing, and let's say if it doesn't work, you'll take more time in fixing, right? I'm just telling you with an example, yeah, right? You'd be in that self-doubt. But if you are using AI tools, right, you would not be in that self-doubt. You would focus more on winning. When you are running bare feet and when you're trying to compete with horses, the thought that would come to your head is, how do I even compete?
Right.
But when you are running and competing against horses, while riding on a horse yourself, thought that comes to your mind would be, how do I win?
Right. Yeah.
That's a complete change of, so the mentality changes completely. So
Yeah.
you go from how do I compete to how do I win?
Yeah.
And that is more important in my understanding.
We have that assistance here where we can leverage AI. There has to be a balance, underuse and overuse of AI. As you said, that LLM should not be overused. If you genuinely need LLM in your life, then you can just go and use it. Otherwise, you can just have your regular tools and play around it. So there has to be a balance. Like just walking barefoot and competing with someone who is on a horse. It's kind of that.
Absolutely.
I agree. And there is noise about where to start in AI, especially for a beginners. Some people say skip straight to Gen AI. Others say go deep into fundamentals first. You have worked across Python, ML, deep learning, and now Gen AI. You have seen that evolution firsthand. If someone is starting today, Python is very important, then ML, then DL. So
To
has this
understand.
roadmap changed?
I think the roadmap still remains the same. It's just that you get to that place faster, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'll give you one more analogy. So let's say you are visiting a temple.
Mm.
So earlier you used to go bare feet. Yeah. Now you are riding a two-wheeler or you're going by car. But you still have to go through the same path.
Yeah.
If the temple is not changing, if the position of the temple is not changing, you'll still have to follow the same road, same path. You'll still have to go through the same road. Maybe now just because the mode through which you are going has changed, so maybe now you'll go and you'll reach there faster. So the path does not change.
Right.
Just now the process is more accelerated. So you would be able to learn things faster. Why these things are working. You would be able to get more assisted, I would say, you'd be accompanied by a lot of AI tools who would be able to explain you why certain things are more important. And you would be able to ask many more cross questions. Earlier, people were just used to, going out and asking questions to their teachers. If they know, they'd answer. If they don't know, they'll just say that we don't know, right?
Right.
Then they started going for YouTube tutorials, courses and all of that stuff. But then again, it is restricted with whatever the amount of information that is there, right? There
Right.
was no way of interacting. Interaction was very limited in that case. So then now ChatGPT, in the era of ChatGPT, Gemini, and all of these LLMs out there, which is at your disposal and exposure, you can ask cross questions. You can always cross question them. You can always ask them to explain it to me in, like I'm 5 year old or something like that. Fully and gradually build your understanding on top of that.
Makes sense. The path should not change, and we should not make it change as well. You have spoken over like 50 events. Which one challenged you the most and why?
The most challenging events are usually the ones where people do not have, or where people have conflicting ideas of AI, right? Because in that case, people are not just coming to learn things, people are coming from the mindset of, they're coming from the objection based mindset. They want to object the change, they want to question the change, right? So, but it is very important to be a part of those environments as well, right? It, as an individual, it helps you build your understanding better.
Right.
So let's say if I'm talking to you right now about AI, and if you start questioning me about, okay, that why AI is not relevant, why I will not trust AI and all of that stuff. So that gives me a good opportunity to understand your perspective and where you are coming from. That enriches my existing knowledge in some way, right?
Right.
But then the challenge is I might not have the entire context of why that person is coming from that side. right? Or why? So over here, I'm just giving a simplified example of one person, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let's say you're taking a session for a set of people who are like 20 people who are having similar mindset,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's.
Yeah.
However, I would say the most challenging set of audience which I've had the hardest time to convince to get on with AI are my parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now recently I've just taught them how they can leverage ChatGPT and Gemini
Mm-hmm.
for, their day-to-day activities, for whatever purposes that they want, for research related purposes and all of that. It was pretty difficult getting started there, right? But slowly and gradually that has worked slightly in my favor now.
Yeah.
But that was a hassle in itself.
Yeah. Our parents have seen no phone, WhatsApp, Instagram, now the chat GPT on their
Things are
phone.
changing pretty fast for them.
Important to see, that change. I mean, Bhavishya, your content reaches many, as you said, you have been given talks. So that means you got beginners as well as advanced practitioners in the same audience, right? That's a tough balance sometimes, too technical and you lose half the crowd. And if you are too simple and you lose half the other crowd. When you're creating content on AI, and how do you decide what's too technical versus what's too simplified or at a beginner level?
There is no right answer to this, I'll be very honest. That's a very good question. The only approach that and to be very honest, too technical or too simple is also very subjective. What might be too simple for you might be too technical for me,
Right.
and vice versa.
Yeah.
So now what happens in that case is you tend to bridge the gap so that even the people who are beginners would be able to follow you through. Even if not till the end, at least 80% also, but still they are better they started off at 20%, but now they are at 80%. So even if they did not understand everything from the content, right, they still have that feeling that, Acha, haan, now I know better.
Yeah.
So you always start from that foundation, and then slowly and gradually you start building on top of that. You try to keep things simple as much as possible, as much as it can be, right? But then I think that
You can build on top of that. And your
eventually
audience,
build on top of that works the best.
yeah, yeah. Understanding your audience, especially if you're at a beginner uh, pool and if you're at a advanced pool, then you have to build your content accordingly. But sometimes on LinkedIn we have everyone, so whatever you're posting on LinkedIn, that gets diluted for the advanced people or vice versa.
There's only certain extent where you can go. I mean, you can dumb it down to a certain extent only, right?
Right.
So in that specific case, you have to be pretty clear that you are going to lose some audience, right?
Yeah.
There are some kind of content, some sort of content that you would want to focus on some particular type of audience, right? And then there'd be some sort of posts which we would want to focus on. So let's say there are some sorts of content which you would want to focus only for decision makers, right? Not very technical, but more business oriented. Then there is some content which is business, techno business kind of thing, right? Technical plus business. There is some kind of content which is purely for developers, so it would be purely business, purely technical and not business. But then there can be one kind of content which you can have technical plus business in such a way where both the audience is involved. So it is dependent on the topic how you would want to go. You cannot simply be sliding in the numbers and the business values and
Yeah.
business terminologies everywhere. It becomes pretty evident after some time.
100%. I mean, the last question, what is the one piece of advice you would give to someone who wants to follow in your footsteps but doesn't know where to start? The first you already said about work on the projects, start building your profile.
Have a good why, I would say. Why do I want to do it? I mean, have a better why, not a good why. Your why should not just be, I want to get placed in, let's say, Google, right? That is a very shallow answer, right? That would only take you as much. You won't go too far. So it should be about having a better understanding of why these things are working the way they are. And now, why do I want to learn that is because I'm interested in it, right? So first, be interested in something.
Yeah.
Only when you are interested in it, you would be able to learn and grasp more things about it. I truly enjoyed talking to you, Renu. I had a great time. I did not even realize where my time went. Thank you very much for having me at your podcast, and I really wish you all the best for all the upcoming episodes. And I'm really looking forward to the content that you'd be producing. All the best from my side.
Thank you so much, Bhavishya, for your time. I really appreciate it.